There are few prospects as interesting as secrets in comic books. Some things are kept secret from people within this comics world, like a superhero's secret identity, but the readers knew exactly who and what Peter Parker was in his very first appearance. As a result, there aren't a lot of things that are kept secret from fans, so to find them, you have to look into aspects of a character or comic book universe the creators might not have had an answer for from the beginning. Other secrets could be planned from the very beginning or develop over time as a result of popularity and reader interest. Whatever the reason something is kept hidden when it does happen, the fans tend to appreciate the reveal, and it makes for a fantastic story. Imagine reading about your favourite superhero character for years only to learn that they were something else all along. You're either going to love it or you'll hate it, but in all likelihood you will still be fascinated by the secret reveal. Because comics are published monthly, it can take years for a story to develop into a secret revelation. These secrets are some of the best, with creators keeping them from the fans for as long as was humanly possible. I am Kirsten from What Culture Comics, and these are 10 obscure comic secrets that took years to discover. Number 10. The secret of Wonder Woman's creator. Fans of Wonder Woman will likely know that she was created by international game psychologist Dr. William Moulton Marston. That's public information these days, but when Wonder Woman first appeared in All-Star Comics number 8 in 1941, the identity of her creator remained a mystery to the readers, and it would remain that way for quite a long time. Wonder Woman was successful pretty much from the get-go, and she was a powerful female character introduced into a male-dominated media. It didn't hurt that she was as beautiful as she was badass, and so it was natural that people wanted to know who was behind the impressive creation. Her intro story was credited to Charles Moulton, which just so happened to be Doc's pen name. In 1942, Wonder Woman became the first female superhero to get her own book, and with this milestone, Marston came out of the pseudonym closet. He dropped his pen name and announced his work in a press release titled "Noted Psychologist Revealed as Author of Best-Selling Wonder Woman." Number 9. The true identity of the Green Goblin. When you think of Spider-Man's one real nemesis, most probably picture Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. After all, he did kill Spidey's girlfriend and make his life a living hell more than once, but when he first appeared, nobody knew who was behind the mask. The Green Goblin was always shown with his face in shadow, and it was anyone's guess as to his true identity. Spider-Man certainly didn't know who it was, and there wasn't any indication as to who it might be either. He was first introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man number 14, but it wasn't until number 39 that we found out who he was. It was an iconic issue and features one of the best covers drawn by John Romita for the series. The Goblin clearly knew who Peter was in this issue, but it wasn't revealed until the very end who he was, and it was shocking. In the final panel of the issue, the Green Goblin pulls off his mask to reveal that he is none other than Norman Osborn himself, the father of Pete's buddy, and probably the very last person he ever imagined to be the Goblin. Number 8. The Mystery of Charles Francis Xavier. In 2017, a new version of Professor Charles Xavier was introduced following his death in the Avengers vs. X-Men. When that happened, Xavier's mind survived his body's destruction, and he spent the equivalent of 1,000 years trapped on the astral plane, where he fought against the Shadow King the entire time. When he was resurrected, he was far more enigmatic than he was before, which was compounded by the fact that he never removed his Cerebro helmet. This obscured his face, and he took on the simpler name of X, but that wasn't all that changed. X had a dream, but it was different than his previous belief that humans and mutants could live together in harmony. After spending a millennium on the astral plane, his ideas took a bit of a turn, and he was colder and more willing to use his psychic powers on his pupils, whom he physically nudged into supporting him. The reason he wore the helmet for so long had to do with the fact that his mind was sitting inside the body of a Phantom X, and he wasn't willing to share that information with just anyone. Eventually, he orchestrated his own death, knowing that the X-Men could resurrect him. When he was resurrected, he returned to his own body, and this finally gave him the push that he needed to remove the Cerebro helmet, but it took a few years to get from his initial resurrection to that point. Number 7. The true nature of Spider-Man's black costume. Spider-Man was one of the superheroes who got involved, against his will, in the Secret Wars event, and while he was mucking about while wearing a torn and tattered costume, he discovered a strange ball of black goo. When he touched it, it covered him and replaced his costume. It was serendipitous, and despite the fact that Peter Parker is one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel Universe, he didn't really question it. Fast forward from May to November of 1984, and Peter heads to Reed Richards for help in finally determining what it was. Reed confirms that the costume is alive and is trying to bond with Peter permanently, so he helps him remove it, but the costume's true nature wasn't revealed for a little while after that. The symbiote's true nature was finally revealed in the final pages of The Amazing Spider-Man number 298, when he was introduced as having bonded with someone who also had reason to hate Peter Parker: Eddie Brock. The symbiote has bonded to become Venom, and its true nature was finally revealed. Number 6. The Secret Life of Shepherd Book. While the mysterious life of Shepherd Book didn't begin in comics, it remained as part of them long after Firefly went off the air, and it took some time before it was finally explained. On the show, Book was one of the most mysterious characters in Reynolds' retinue, and he was tight-lipped about his life. When Firefly was cancelled, it found new life in comic books, but it wasn't until The Shepherd's Tale was published in 2010 that fans got any answers about his past. Zack Whedon, the author of the comic in question, said this of the book shortly before it was published: "You will see Book's full trajectory, how he became the man that he was in the show and who he was previous to that. It takes you deep into his past. You really get to see the entire evolution of this man. It's an intricate set of circumstances that created the man that we meet in the show, so that is very fun to explore." The book is broken up into several parts, each one following from an earlier period in Book's life. There are tons of interesting points, and pretty much every question a fan might have had about his life is played out in meticulous detail. Number 5. The Ultimate Fate of Jason Todd. One of the best kept secrets in the DC universe took a lot of fans by surprise, and had to do with a character who had been dead for many years. Batman's second Robin, Jason Todd, who was brutally killed by the Joker at the end of the Death in the Family storyline. Todd's death affected Bruce for decades, and he never really truly got over it. In 2005, Judd Winnick began writing the Under the Hood storyline, which revolved around the true identity of the second Red Hood. By the end of Under the Red Hood, the fans finally learned the true identity of the masked villain, as well as the real fate of Jason Todd, because Robin didn't die. He grew up to become a brutal, vengeance-seeking badass. It wasn't pleasant for a while, but eventually Bruce and Jason reconciled, calling a truce, but it wouldn't come until 2013. Number 4. The cause of the zombie outbreak. When The Walking Dead first came out, there was no explanation as to why the dead were suddenly standing up and biting people. For all the time The Walking Dead was being published, creator Robert Kirkman remained tight-lipped about the origin, and he consistently refused to offer up any explanation or word on the subject. Once the comic had reached its final issue with number 193, Kirkman must have felt it didn't matter anymore, so he finally gave an answer in a tweet on January 22nd, 2020. In the tweet, he simply wrote 2 words which explained it all: space spore. The tweet was eventually deleted, and Kirkman said that it was meant to be a joke, but seeing as it's the only morsel of information that he's given about the subject, it may have well have been an answer fans were looking for all along. Number 3. Wolverine's true name and origin. When Wolverine was first introduced, there wasn't a lot of information about who he was, but over time, he became incredibly popular, and his story was fleshed out. Wolverine was Logan, a Canadian mutant with no memory of his past. Fans were mostly sated with the ambiguity of his past, but there were still lingering questions about where he came from, who he was, and after the adamantium was removed by Magneto, just why did he have bone claws in the first place? The answers finally came in 2007 with the publication of the 6-part miniseries Origin. Wolverine was James Howlett, the son of a rich Canadian plantation owner in the late 19th century. He was also not the son of his so-called father, John Howlett Jr., and was instead the illegitimate son of Thomas Logan, the family groundskeeper. After these books were published, they were followed by a sequel and then an ongoing series titled Wolverine Origins, and his story was further detailed following the early years depicted in Origin. Number 2. The Yellow Impurity Problem. When DC entered the Silver Age of comics, the company did so by changing up the entire mythos of the Green Lanterns. Hal Jordan became the Green Lantern of Sector 2814, and a new mythos was born. The original Green Lantern had a weakness against wood, but for Jordan and the rest of the members of the Green Lantern Corps, the weakness was against the colour yellow. This so-called yellow impurity limited a lantern's ability to attack or defend against anything yellow, which became a problem when Sinestro got his hands on a Quarian ring, which used yellow instead of green as its power base. For years and years, the source of the yellow impurity remained unknown, or at the very least, an underdeveloped concept. That changed when Hal Jordan lost his marbles and destroyed the central power battery on Oa. When he did this, he unknowingly released Parallax, the personification of fear in the universe. It was Parallax who introduced the yellow impurity into the battery, and when he was released, the only Green Lantern left, Kyle Rayner, the newest member of the Corps chosen after its destruction, had a complete immunity to the yellow impurity. Number 1. How Darth Vader learned Luke was his son. Star Wars comics have been around since 1977, and they have long had close ties to the movies. Despite this, it had never been revealed in any of the hundreds of comics published for decades exactly how Darth Vader learned that Luke was his son. In The Empire Strikes Back, he knew, but how did he come by this information? The secret was finally revealed in Star Wars Darth Vader, published by Marvel Comics. Not only do we finally get to see the moment Vader learned the true identity of the young Jedi who destroyed the Death Star, but we get to see that fan favourite Boba Fett was the man who passed that information along to Darth Vader. Now that the books are considered canon following Disney's purchase of all Star Wars media, this was the event that explained that pivotal scene in Empire. This revelation drove Vader to near madness, and he nearly took the Emperor's head off. Instead, he found a way to restrain himself, which is how he managed to play the long game and ultimately kill the Emperor in Return of the Jedi.